Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Carrie Coogan. I'm Deputy Director of Community Engagement and Public Affairs for the Kansas City Public Library. Thank you all so much for being here this morning for the Kansas City Coalition for Digital Inclusion monthly meeting. We've been meeting for close to 10 years, first Friday of every month, either here at the library or online. So if you're new, we'd love to welcome you and ask you to say hello, introduce yourself if you're a brand new person to this call. Anybody new?
Yeah, I'm Bill Abston. I'm the director of the Kansas Office of Broadband Development. I'm new to the call, but I'll be ready to address any questions you might have, but I've got to drop at 11 o'clock for another call.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for being here. Yes, you're on the agenda for today, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you. And once we get through the first part of the meeting, then I will bring you back up. That sounds great. Thanks so much for being here.
Yes, good morning. My name is Doria Miguel. I am with Light Under the Sun. We're a new nonprofit here in Kansas City, providing programming for the elders of our community. And I'm happy to be here.
Doria, welcome.
Thank
And
you.
congratulations on this new entity. Are you serving members of the community on both sides of the state line, or can you give us a geological footprint?
We're new, so we're focusing right now in Missouri, on the Missouri side. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much and welcome.
Great, thank you.
Any other new members to the call?
Good morning. I'm Gretchen Turnbull. I'm the new program manager for the WellSky Foundation, and we are exploring digital literacy programming to expand our reach on social determinants of health for vulnerable populations, both here in Kansas City and across the country.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Gretchen. Are you, can you tell me just a little bit more about what your organization does? And can you say the name of it again? I didn't catch it.
Sure. It's the WellSky Foundation. We are the philanthropic arm of WellSky Corporation, which is a healthcare IT company based here in Kansas City. Our corporate headquarters are actually in South Overland Park. And the foundation actually focuses on removing barriers to social determinants of health. So things like housing insecurity, food insecurity, social isolation, transportation limitations. We look at partnering with organizations both here in Kansas City and across the country that are looking to remove barriers in those spaces.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Really happy to have you on the call and would love to learn more about what you do. So thank you.
Thanks.
I think there was someone else.
Yes, I'm Jackie Lamer. I'm a volunteer for Care Beyond the Boulevard. And Gretchen, thank you. WellSky supports Care Beyond the Boulevard.
Yes, hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Care Beyond the Boulevard provides free medical care to the homeless and uninsured on both sides of the state line through 9 weekly clinics, 2 of which are from a mobile medical unit, a brand new state-of-the-art one right now, started 9.5 years ago out of a pickup truck. And now we go to homeless camps twice a week and have bricks and mortar clinics around the metro area.
Oh, wonderful, Jackie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Any other new members to the call? Well, wonderful. And thank you all for being here. And if there's someone that you think should be on this call or does not know about this monthly call, please let us know. Or feel free to forward this information to anybody that you think should be on this call. We are all working in this space together. And so it's open to anyone to join on the first Friday of the month at 10:30.
Hey, Carrie, this is
Yeah.
Tom. Sorry
Hi,
for
Tom.
getting it. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Last month's call, I called out Anna Stewart from Della Lamb, but she, for whatever reason, had to step away or was unable. And I think Anna is on this call, and I hate to just put you on the spot like that, but you've done such exciting work at Della Lamb. I was wondering if you could just say hello to everybody and just give a quick update on the new lab.
I'm sorry, I must have missed it last time. Yes, we're so grateful for your help, Mr. Tom. We started a lab at Delalam. We have 28 laptops donated. Tom was able to donate the mouse pads, and headsets. It's going really well. I actually have pictures I'd be happy to share if we have time at the end. It's just going so great. We've got volunteers. Lots of clients come in to practice English or apply for jobs or digital literacy, financial literacy, all of it. So it's been really successful and just so awesome.
Great.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Tom.
much for the
Yeah.
update, and thanks, Tom, for letting us know. And that's the wonderful thing about this coalition is it's a chance to meet new people, a chance to hear what everybody's working on and work together. And I think Wendy had the mission and vision up for a couple of minutes. I was just getting to that, Wendy. For those of you who don't know, here's our mission and vision. Every citizen and household in the Kansas City metropolitan area has access to the internet, the equipment needed to use it, and the skills needed to take advantage. And then our mission together. Here's the original steering council. Ina Montgomery, founder and executive director of Urban Tech. Aaron Deacon, founder and managing director of KC Digital Drive. And then you've already met me. And then I do want to call out Wendy Pearson, who is my colleague here at the library and what runs our tech access programs and a lot of other digital inclusion initiatives at the library. And she's the one who's doing the behind the scenes work today. And if you want to connect with the coalition on social media, here are the platforms that we use. Okay, well, with that, I am going to, I believe we have both Dimitri Farthing, and you already heard from Bill. So Dimitri is the digital inclusion specialist for the Missouri Office of Broadband Development. And then we also have a new director from the Kansas Office of Broadband Development, and that's Bill Abston. So Bill, each month, we take a few moments at the beginning of our call to hear from both of our broadband directors to find out whether it's a big announcement, a small announcement, or just no update at all about what's happening in the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri around this work. And so hoping to hear from you in your new role about what's happening in the state of Kansas and what's your vision for the future.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Bill Abston. I'm the new director at the Kansas Office of Broadband Development. Been here since the 17th of March, so it's like drinking from the fire hose, right? The good news is that we've just announced that the governor has just announced the awards out to the DOC, our Digital Opportunities to Connect Kansas, which is a $5 million program that was created by the Spark Committee on using the American Rescue Plan ARPA funding. In 2024, we awarded 15 projects for nearly $2.6 million, and in 2025, we've awarded $2.3 million to 13 organizations with a potential impact to nearly 50,000 Kansans. The program supports digital skills training to expand opportunities for workforce and essential technology skills. The digital skills gaps can slow productivity and economic growth, and through these programs, Kansas can gain skills that can support their workforce readiness, cybersecurity, and continuous learning. We're also on the cusp of being able to announce our awards for the ADOPT program, which is the Access Digital Opportunity and Partnership Trust. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to announce that as well. And as you guys have been following the testimony by Secretary Lubnick, we're expecting a policy change or NOFO. We're not sure which one it is, coming out of NTIA and the Department of Commerce, which will allow us to advance with our BEAD program. Our BEAD program has now been delayed or paused or whatever the word that you would like to use, but we're hopeful, fingers crossed and everything crossed, that we'll be able to advance that and to move into the contracting and on into the construction of the digital access to all of Kansas, which would, of course, be complete by year 2030. On the flip side of that coin is that we had lost or have paused the funding for the DOORS program, which was an $8.3 million program through NTIA that was paused by the new administration. So we're still crossing everything that will come back, and we'll continue to advocate for that implementation of that DOORS program.
That's wonderful, Bill. Thank you. That's quite an update, and I think that's a lot of new information for some of the people on this call. I think Leslie Scott may have put some of the information you talked about in the chat, but does anybody have any questions for Bill about the great news about some of the money that's going to go out in the state of Kansas? Any questions for Bill about upcoming BEAD proposal? Any questions?
Well, great.
Okay, Bill, thanks so much. And we'll be back in touch with you to get more information and updates from you as well.
I look forward to your monthly updates, and I'll participate as much as I'm allowed. I'm the new show pony, so I've been traveling. I was in Chicago and Wichita, and then Nashville. We're going to Columbus and over to DC. So hopefully we'll be back and available for your next round.
Well, thank you very much. We're grateful to have you on the team.
Okay. Thanks a
And we
lot.
can also make sure that Bill's contact information is available in our newsletter that goes out after this meeting for everyone. Okay, thank you, Bill. And now Dimitri Farthing from the State of Missouri Broadband Office of Development. Dimitri, are you still on the call? I saw you a moment ago.
Hi.
Excuse
me, can folks hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. I am here. Thank you so much, as always, for having me. I'm going to take this opportunity to say hello to Bill. As a state broadband office, we work very closely with Kansas. I knew your predecessor. I know some other folks in the office, Joseph, Shelley, and the bunch. Really excited to have you there. I know they're happy to have a full team again. And then more broadly, as it relates to Missouri, I don't really have many updates. I think everyone is aware that Digital Equity Act program has been indefinitely suspended, and we have communicated that to the subgrantees we had intended to fund via that project, and we are currently waiting to see how that goes. There's really not much we can do. Hard at work on BEAD, but again, really waiting to see how some federal developments play out. I think the really only bit of news I can share with you all today is that when did this article publish? This article was published June 3rd, but it looks like the Attorney General for Vermont is setting up a lawsuit to fight the cancellation of the Digital Equity Act, and I will share that article with you all now. So certainly something to keep an eye on.
Great. Thank you, Dimitri. Does anyone have any questions for Dimitri on this update or anything else?
I have a question, Carrie. It's Tom. Hi, JR. You had talked to us over the past year about some specific efforts from the state of Missouri regarding rural healthcare and rural telecoms. Is that set of programs and potential funding for rural telehealth, is that also subject to the same restrictions and constraints that are being applied to the DEA, or is that a separate initiative that maybe still has some momentum?
Thanks for the question, Tom. No, that the program as we planned it was also going to be funded with digital opportunity funds, but I can say we are currently evaluating how we can, to what extent we can reapportion remaining BEAD funds to accomplish some of those non-deployment activities, including telehealth, televeterinary medicine.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dimitri. Any other questions from the group? Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to move on to our featured presentation. So many of you know that last month, NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, held their annual conference, Net Inclusion, at the Gila River Indian Community just outside of Phoenix, Arizona on May 20th through the 22nd. And we were fortunate enough to have several members of our community and members of this coalition attend and also present at that conference. And so we really wanted to just have some of the members come and talk about their experience, talk about what they learned there, what the vibe was, how people across the country are navigating digital inclusion initiatives, digital opportunity initiatives right now, and just get a sense of how things are going nationally. And I think we have a great group of people to talk about it from a variety of perspectives. And I think we all know that some programs, some activities are on pause for right now, and we're just waiting to see what's going to happen. And so I think it's a good time to just, sort of hear from others around the country about how we navigate through this time and how we keep moving forward and keep working really hard for our communities. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tom Esselman from Depot KC, and members of the community who were there: Jeremy Hegley, Senior Community Development Advisor with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City; Marissa Martinez, the Community Development Advisor, also from the Federal Reserve Bank; Rachel Merlot, who many of you know, Head of Government and Community Affairs, now for the Central Region, and Head of Local Government Affairs Strategy for Google Fiber; Adriana Piccina, she's the Impact Strategist for Health Forward Foundation; and then Leslie Scott, who's the Digital Inclusion Program Manager for KC Digital Drive. So Tom is going to moderate the conversation, but want to turn it over to all of you.
Thanks, Carrie. And first of all, I do apologize because I'm always on video. I'm just going to try to show you. No, I'm not. I'm not going to show you why I'm not on video, because I have to be in my car, and I'm going very slowly, and I'm on a side road. So you have to trust me. I'm being very safe. But
be safe, Tom. Be safe.
Hey, Tom, maybe you should pull over. I didn't
Pull
realize.
over.
I'm trying to. I just want to find a nice, stable place. Now, I just want to make a very brief introductory comment, but really make sure the bulk of the time in this discussion involves comments from my colleagues who Carrie just named, who were at this event. And my intro comment is this. As Carrie mentioned, we've been doing this coalition work for about 10 years, and certainly as long, if not longer, than most other communities around the country. And over the past 6 or 8 months, as the news from our federal government about the apparent demise of the Digital Equity Act grant, although it is now thankfully being challenged in some courts, but it put a real damper on what a lot of us were hoping was going to be a big boost, not just in financial support, but in kind of the overall catalytic impact of the work we do as practitioners and the work we do together as a coalition. So a lot of that enthusiasm has been dampened around the country, and I think everyone that wound up going, I'm just speaking for myself now, but everyone that wound up going to this event, I think, was looking forward to this national conference to be both a little bit of a chance to console each other over some of the depressing news, but I think more importantly to build each other up and to really celebrate with each other how impactful the work we do is. Not just that we did, and not just that we were hoping to do with this funding, but we do this work day in and day out, and it's not going to continue. The needs aren't going to go away. So I think the chance to get together all in one place and see some old friends, and certainly a lot of new ones, for me was a great opportunity to just reaffirm our commitment to the work involved in this space. And I certainly took advantage of almost every workshop and speaking engagement there. to get a sense that that's pretty much true in communities throughout the country. But what I thought we'd do is allow those of us that Carrie mentioned, our colleagues, to share their experiences, and then I might pick one or two common themes or one or two questions to ask them after they've each had a chance to share their takeaways. So in no particular order, I'm going to call out a few people, probably based on who I saw first when I was out there. And I'm going to start with Rachel from G Fiber, because Rachel's taken on a much larger geographic area of responsibility than she had when she first started working with us, more than 10 years ago. And there was a great reception we got to have the very first night when we were in Phoenix. And Rachel, I just thought it would be good if you could get us started and share with us some of your takeaways from the net inclusion and the whole week for us being together out in the Phoenix area.
Sure thing. Thanks, Tom. First, I have to give you a hard time. I feel like what you are doing in your car today is one of the first things that we would teach people about online safety in any class. But seriously, I had a really nice time at the conference. The reception that Google Fiber hosted was an opportunity for myself and our colleagues to get the different partners we work with across the country together for just a nice little bit of networking and drinks before the official things kicked off. And that was really cool to get folks in our Mesa office. So thanks for coming, Tom. I attended some of the breakout sessions, and one that I enjoyed was on AI and digital literacy training. It was really how people are trying to work AI into their curriculum. And I will say, it seems like most of the folks that I talked with were still pretty early stage. They're working on it. It's evolving. One of the folks who spoke talked about an organization called World Education and how they've developed a checklist. So for those of you who are working on curriculum, they specifically called out the World Education Learning Objectives checklist. So that might be something, if you're in that space, that you could look into. Jeremy Hegley facilitated a panel discussion that included several funders. I enjoyed that one as well. And one of the messages that our team took away was this idea that, our language may have to change in how we talk about the work we do given the climate, but what we're doing essentially isn't changing. And so someone had this very pithy statement of that, the message may change, but the mission does not. And I thought that was, it captured the sentiment really well. From an ISP perspective, we are not well represented at that conference. It was Google Fiber and one other that were among the sponsors, and I didn't see many name badges from any others. So, earned or not, I think the vibe towards ISPs is generally not, we're so glad to be working with you in that room. So that is something that is not surprising to our team. We hear it for different reasons. What I appreciate in our local coalition, though, is that, we can have conversations and try to come together and solve problems and boost services in our greater Kansas City community. And, that I feel like ISPs are part of the solution. And to hear a panelist say, ISPs are predatory, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the vibe that's out there. But on the other hand, I'm here because I feel like we have a stake in supporting your success, just as much as, we want to make sure that you're aware of where our business is and what we offer. So that was, something I think we were prepared to hear, but we were, trying to be empathetic toward folks who are probably dealing with some tricky situations as networks are growing or not growing in the way that they might like to see. And then the other thing, back to the AI class that I took, or the workshop, the breakout session. I haven't done this yet, but for anybody who's doing, and you may all know this, this is new to me as somebody who works for a Google subsidiary, but there's something through Gemini called the Career Dreamer AI. And you go into this and you put in apparently your interests and things, and it spits out, here are career paths that someone like you might check out. So if you're in a workforce development kind of thing, or even just, at a point in your career where maybe there's, career number 2 or 3 on your mind, that sounded really interesting to me. And I took note of it, and I'm just looking at my notebook. So career dreamer AI, that sounded pretty interesting. Overall, great experience. And then the Google Fiber team, we had a little team bonding after that. So we left the conference when that ended. We drove to Sedona, had a little woo-woo, went to the Grand Canyon. It was awesome. So we really made a nice time of it. And I love my team. So I'm really glad that we were able to be there. And of course, being able to catch up with practitioners from across the country is always special. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Can I ask a quick follow-up question regarding, because I think it's really interesting what you shared about both how ISPs were being, I guess, people were concerned about them. Is that the vibe that you got? And if that's true, I mean, can you talk a little bit about more? I mean, we've had great experience with Google Fiber here, as you mentioned, but where that's coming from for some of the people at the conference, like why would they see, from your perspective, an ISP as someone they wouldn't want to work with or predatory?
I think if they're thinking solely about the business of an ISP and where you invest your capital in ways where you have to make a return on it. And so it takes longer sometimes to get to regions or neighborhoods that also need the services. And so that has to be its attention sometimes. And then, are they offering a product mix that's going to work for a broad spectrum of the community? What isn't, and I think feelings are raw sometimes. So it could have just been in the heat of passion that someone on a panel felt like they needed to say that out loud. On the flip side, ISPs are doing great things in terms of, those who are pursuing grants to be able to put infrastructure in that otherwise a business wouldn't be able to do, or getting devices out there, or supporting digital literacy training. With so much uncertainty about where the funding is coming these days, where maybe you thought it was coming and maybe it wasn't. We can't solve all of the problems, but the private sector maybe becomes more part of the solution in a way that maybe people weren't thinking about 12 months ago. So I don't know. I think to Tom's first point, there were some feelings about a lot of things. And so I guess it's understandable why somebody might have felt that they needed to vocalize that.
And then I think the other important point that you made is just that as it relates to funders and maybe even federal dollars, what we say and how we say it matters. And so has it been your experience, and I'll ask we'll ask the other funders and people on the call, that are people changing their names? Are they changing programs? Are they changing initiatives? I mean, we're still doing the work, obviously, but are there?
Yeah.
Do organizations need to do that in order to hope for funding?
It depends on who you're asking for the money from. Like the folks that I'm working with, no, we're not. Google Fiber, G Fiber, is not at a point where we're saying to people, we don't do digital inclusion anymore. Let's talk opportunity or workforce development. We're funding digital inclusion. Others may be in a different position. So that, I think that puts it on the grant preparer to make sure that they are meeting the standards and expectations that is going to set them up for success. One message that I heard loud and clear, and I've heard just in conversations that I have in the communities with organizations that we work with, is that organizations are looking for more flexibility in what our sponsorships or grants can be used for. They might have seen some resources go away. And so where maybe previously they would have come to Google Fiber for something that's like really straightforward, I need money for the curriculum or a device refresh. Sometimes these requests are becoming a little broader. And so as a funder, especially with organizations where we have a longstanding relationship, I know you're doing the work. I know you are accountable. Hopefully, the funders are in a position to allow for a little bit of flexibility in this time of uncertainty.
Great. Adriana or Jeremy, did you want to address that question? Or are there other questions for Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with Rachel's point, and with Health Forward Foundation, we're not changing anything. We are committed to health equity, digital equity, and unapologetically.
I think there's some additional nuance that I took from those discussions was there's two things. One is, are we using language that, although it shouldn't be, has become way too polarized? And what are the scenarios where we adapt the language to convey what the work really is? It's economic mobility. It's ensuring, people are connected and they have opportunity. There was a second bit of that conversation that was focused more on knowing your audience, more broadly speaking. So if you're seeking funding that's related to workforce development, leaning in on the workforce development terminology as opposed to digital inclusion. I mean, that's just, it's marketing 101, but it's really important to point that out.
I think it's interesting. T-Mobile, their headquarters grant, which is open up right now until July 31st, has made no attempt to change its terminology. It's a digital equity grant program. We weren't able to get Meryl or Janae on this call, but they're another partner that, to Adriana's point, they're maintaining their commitment. I will say, in comparison to Google Fiber, and no knock against T-Mobile, but Rachel, you personally and your colleagues throughout the country have been significantly more engaged over a longer stretch of time in kind of coalition work, and you even use the word empathy. And it's clear after all these years and after the consistency of the work that you and Google Fiber have done in this space, it's not just lip service. I mean, yes, it's good for business, but it's good for business because it is about being part of the community. And that's why we're all doing this work, to help on a community level. And I think the change in strategic direction a couple of years ago, the Health Forward Foundation has implemented, that Adriana said, is also, it's about being embedded in your community. And so I thought the breakout session, Jeremy, that you facilitated with funders was one of, I'm glad Rachel brought it up, it was one of the more impactful ones that I attended as well. Because it just shows that in spite of the chamber and federal administrations,
Jeremy,
relationships with, and we basically do our work with our community funders and our community practitioners.
Tom, you're breaking up a little bit, but I did want to ask Jeremy, could you share a little bit more about that breakout session that they're referring to from the conference, so the rest of the group knows?
Sure. So Angela Seifer asked me to host back in January in a different environment, asked me to host a panel discussion with a variety of philanthropic organizations to talk just about with the goal of helping to convey different ways to approach philanthropic organizations and just some principles of engagement. And so it's a lot of some of what you might take from what Rachel said, which is there's some relationship development that goes with that. I'm paraphrasing some of your words there, Rachel, but essentially it's a different ask when you're approaching someone, a funder you know versus one that you don't know. There's different ways to engage different funders. If you know one funder, if you've worked with one funder, it's important to remember you've only worked with one funder, and another funder is going to have different criteria and motivators. And so the discussion was a lot on what are some of those considerations. Obviously, there was also, given the environment that we're in today, I pulled the presenters together a week before to have a discussion about what's changed, because we don't want to falsely give false hope, because at the end of the day, I don't believe, and I believe the general consensus, according to the funders I've spoken with, is that philanthropy does not have pockets deep enough to cover the social needs in general across the country. And so we just have to be realistic about that. And so separately, later in the day, I facilitated a closed door conversation with funders, and we did this last year. We're anticipating about 12 participants, and I believe we ended up bringing in 21 chairs. So it was a very engaged conversation. And just as we were in the general plenary breakout session, the comments and observations were made that it's important to understand your language and what you needed, how to adapt your language versus staying true to your mission and being distinct and knowing what your mission is and what you're not going to change, and how important the language is. There was a bit of introspection with the funders in that closed door session about recognizing that they had an interest in bringing more people to the table, and how do they do that, and how do they draw the through lines between digital inclusion and the missions of some of those other institutions.
That's great. That's wonderful. Adriana and Marissa, I think this was your first time at this conference. Would you like to share your impressions? What stood out to you? What you learned?
Yeah, it was my first time, and I regret that my two colleagues on the Place Purpose team, Jennifer Tidwell and John Trammell, were not able to come with me. But for me, I was expecting a somber. I think I even spoke to Leslie right before we went on the trip, and we're like, oh my God, it's going to be so somber. But it turned out to be a very uplifting time. I've never been on an Indian reservation, and so just the ability to have stayed. I stayed an extra, the half day. The conference ended on Friday at noon, and they offered an opportunity to go on site visits. So I did take advantage of that, and being on a reservation and seeing, touching, feeling, and hearing the communities that live on the reservation, and some of the really impressive resources that they have, because they have 4 casinos on the whole reservation. We were not far from one. I think some of the attendants stayed at the Sheraton where the conference was, and then down the street was the casino that had a hotel as well. I was very impressed with the number of people that were there. I think close to 1,850 or so. The attendants were also very diverse, not just in race, ethnicity, and region, but also in sectors. Had the opportunity to meet folks from ISPs that I've never heard of, as well as I met some funders and, navigators, folks that are on the ground from all different walks of life. My understanding was that this was the first time that they've offered more community health and health focus workshop sessions. So I tended to gear more towards the telehealth, rural type of sessions, but they had a variety. I mean, it was hard to decide, and I regret I missed the funders one. I missed the coalition. There were some great sessions, and I just couldn't be at both at the same time. And I was really proud of our Kansas City presenters that were there. Everyone did a great job on their panels, and it was great to hear the highlights of our community in Kansas City. And lastly, I would just say that the meeting that Jeremy held with the funders was also very empowering as well as helpful. I made a lot of contacts there with folks like John and I that are looking for better ways to invest in digital equity. And as someone said earlier, foundations do not have all the dollars to replace the federal funding, but we could certainly work together and work, what they say, work smarter, not harder. So that was a very good, powerful session. So kudos to you, Jeremy, for bringing us together.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. And do you think that that closed door session is something that will help guide how funding opportunities will happen in the future for, whether it's locally or in other locations across the country, Jeremy?
It could. I have a call with Angela, I believe, next week, and we're discussing next steps or notes taken. We definitely approached it as Chatham House rules, so wanted to make sure that we don't share who said what. But I think that there was, as Adriana mentioned, a general desire to find ways that those participants could work together and learn more, and somewhat like a funders coalition in spirit. So more to come on that.
And then Marissa, and after Marissa, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the conference as well as Leslie Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. So yeah, I did have a chance to go last year. I'm new to this space for digital inclusion. So last year it was probably like drinking out of a hose, like trying to understand concepts and ideas. But it did feel, in my opinion, last year's in comparison to this year's, is last year has this high level overview about digital inclusion at a highest level. And this year it felt a little bit more in the weeds and a little bit more granular as far as tactics goes. But again, considering the perspective, I have a little bit more knowledge than I did a year ago. So maybe it's a combination of both. I think high level about just some thematic observations. I think everyone shared there was an opportunity to tap into optimism, which was that kind of bled through the entire, or was threaded through the entire sessions. Another key thing that came up was storytelling and messaging. So this idea that, we have, and maybe this goes back to what I was just saying earlier, this idea of digital inclusion from a high level. And now we're down to actually doing the work. And we have more experiences and more details on how things work and don't work, and how do we convey that message across the entire ecosystem of digital inclusion. So I think that was another challenge and maybe discussion points that kind of occurred. Another thing that came up was this idea being more focused on the long-term game as it relates to digital inclusion or digital access, and not to start to focus on our immediate responses of what's not working and where the barriers are there. So again, a lot of the sidebar conversations and even table discussions were like, how do we get tactical despite some of the barriers and hurdles that might be there, or just unknowns. So like kind of sticking to still serving the individual, serving the bigger cause. And then definitely a lot more of a desire for pulling folks together and convening around the topic. So more in-depth conversations, again, tactical, and leaning into that optimism. And then I will point out a session, I think similar to what Rachel was talking about earlier, is the AI session. I thought was extremely informative. And one of the things that stood out to me, and I think it just resonated, was there was applications of AI and how it's being used in the application, say from a practitioner standpoint. And the example was shared was how an agency, a social service agency, was using AI to review a lease agreement, for a rental lease agreement, and how that kind of offset some of the funding that they were losing from the other navigators or folks that were helping with the individuals get into some housing. But the ChatGPT could pull out like some of the high level responsibilities of the renter. So that way it was very clear what they were getting into, since they were first time into renting a home. And so I thought that was really, really helpful. At the same time, the discussion was had about challenges and things that we need to be aware of. And in a table discussion, kind of talking about or debriefing after this AI session, some folks were talking about things that they wish they would have prepared their clients better. So I think the takeaway for me when comparing those two sessions and just some of the general sidebar conversations is that, you know, AI is definitely something that's going to be things that we talk about from day to day, but also to have that balance on what's working well, where can it be implemented, but also like what do we need to be careful on and what do we need to prepare individuals on around security as it comes to technology and then potential pitfalls. So those are some of my takeaways from the overall conference.
Those are really insightful, Marissa, and I appreciate them, especially because there was so much optimism when the federal funding was announced, and we had, you know, high hopes for some real transformational change. But it also reminds us that we've been doing this work before that happened. We are all still together meeting and collaborating and sharing information, and we can keep doing those things. It doesn't mean that all the work that we continue to do, you know, day to day, every single one of us is doing this work day to day, can't still keep doing that work together and collaborating and moving forward. So maybe it's a, you know, a blip for right now, but we all know that this work continues regardless of what happens out there. So we need to just continue to rely on each other and collaborate together. So thank you for those insights. Those are really helpful and inspiring for the rest of us who couldn't make it.
I wanted to add one more thing. Marissa's comments just made me think is that I think maybe I heard one time somebody use the phrase three-legged stool, which to me shows that like we're moving beyond the basic, this is what digital inclusion is. We were getting more into the weeds. So I'm happy to have a three-legged stool conversation with anyone who has no clue what we're talking about. But in that particular forum, I was like, oh, okay, we're doing other things now. That was cool.
Yeah.
Also, I missed Angela Seifer's comments, but I heard good things, and I heard like how like she was not freaked out, which I think is great to set the tone for the whole group of like, we've got work to do. Let's do the work. I was in the room for Gigi Sohn's comments, and man, she gets me fired up from public knowledge. I was so glad to hear her comments because I'm just like, right on, right on, right on. It was nice to have her in that room. I think she brought some of the energy and was able to vocalize a lot of what people were thinking.
Yeah, she's been a strong advocate for many years. Thanks, Rachel. And also, I believe some parts of the conference were live streamed, and I believe they're still up and available. And so, Wendy, we will send that out after this in our newsletter so that people can watch what was captured. And I know that Angela Seifer's comments was part of that too. So now, Leslie, do you want to share some of the highlights for you and some takeaways for the group?
Yeah, I'd had some comments earlier about the ISP conversation. I had my hand up, but I guess I'll just mention them now. I think there's a hangover from the cancellation or the non-funding of the Affordable Connectivity Program. That was what we were recovering from last year. It's like these conferences always come like right after some traumatic funding thing that happens. And so, you know, I think it's sort of compounding, right? Because that wasn't funded. So there we were. So then we were like, okay, well, how do we use DEA? And then that went away. And so I think that's somewhat where the critique of ISPs comes in, because, you know, the affordability aspect is still very much, you know, an issue. So one thing, I was invited to the Cox communications reception that they had. Cox doesn't serve our metro, but they do serve Lawrence and Topeka. And they are probably, if the merger goes through, going to merge with Charter, which is Spectrum. So, you know, that could be something that's interesting. We've had, I think, much more, I don't know what the word is, but interested conversations with Cox. I think if they did serve our market, that they would have definitely been someone we could engage with in this work. They were great when we were doing the ACP outreach grant that covered their market in Kansas, and they were awesome to work with. So it'll be interesting to watch, if there's any change in approach from Charter's perspective here in the market they serve in the KC region. There were a lot of AI workshops. I think there were at least 3 on the docket there. And I agree. I really got a lot out of the funder panel. And I'm, not just doing that because Jeremy's here, but I thought it was really insightful. I think, always envious of Cleveland, but we're definitely making a lot of headway here as well from the funding perspective. It's the atmosphere was definitely one of I would say determination, maybe would be the word I would use. There was, it was very somber and sad last year, and this one was just like, no, we're fighting, darn it, we're gonna do everything we can. I think that it was telling how much smaller it was this year than last year. My guess is mostly because our state broadband offices and other folks weren't there, like from the federal level. But it was. I really thought it was going to be. And it was in a sense. Like one big giant group therapy session, but on the other hand, I think that it was just a lot more positive than I had anticipated it was going to be, to Adriana's comment as well. And like you said, Carrie, like the work doesn't end just because the funding that we thought was coming is not. We continue to have our digital life exchange that we're working with, and as well as we've had a couple of AI workshops to help our partners wade through that the murky waters of AI and implementing that from a policy standpoint. So, defiant, determined, positive, call it what you will, but I think definitely from NDIA's perspective, they're going to fight this till the end.
Thank you, Leslie. The really helpful comments. I guess maybe to round out the conversation with this group, if we were to think about attending a conference next year at this time, what would the topics be? Where will we be at this point next year? How can we, work together? Rachel, I'll start with you. And Tom, I'm not sure if you're still there. You were breaking up a little bit earlier, but you could jump in on this question too. I mean, where do we go from here from a perspective of, all of us who are, sort of in the trenches doing the work? I'm counting funders in the trenches too, because you support us who are doing the work in the trenches. So, thoughts on how we move forward together, thoughts on where we'll be in a year.
Well, first I'd point out the next conference is in less than a year. We will be
right,
in Chicago in February.
That's
so we'll
right. Good point.
It is, yes. I think, I hope by that point, some of the uncertainty has gone away and folks maybe start to have discussions on the work that they're doing, and how they were able to go ahead and move forward, or what was done and what wasn't. And I think that will be, a different story than what we saw. I mean, honestly, I don't know though. I don't know. I think I see some more interesting proposals that come to me, requests for support from different organizations. I hope then, that depending on the landscape, that the room is even more diverse and it grows more diverse every year. I really hope that the Native American communities continue to show up. I felt like this year at the conference was the first time I saw them in force, and it makes sense. We were, in their community, but I hope that continues. I learned so much. So, and just how culturally, as well as from the business perspective of how broadband works in their communities. And there's a lot of sharing and learning to be done there. So I really hope that they continue to stay engaged as the conference evolves.
Thanks, Rachel.
I agree. That was a huge takeaway for me. Not only in terms of its impact on this conference, just having the more physical, concrete presence of tribal populations. And of course, we were on their land, but I think that we're going to see more of that going forward. I think there were other three very quick takeaways that relate to your question, Carrie. The first one to me, and Adriana talked about kind of the populations that she noticed were there. And I agree, there were more healthcare workers there than I've ever seen. And by the way, I've been to all 9 of their conferences, except for one, the one in San Antonio. And so I noticed the difference in more healthcare workers. And I know John Fitzpatrick is on this call. So John, there should be continued optimism in your space for, I think, the growing presence and impact of community health workers and just healthcare clinics and healthcare organizations in general with regard to digital inclusion efforts. But the other thing that really was noticeable to me is how many fewer library people were at this conference, how much pressure libraries are under right now, particularly with IMLS being canceled and then staffing brought back and questions about library funding. And it was noticeable. In fact, the handful of library people that were there, it was really worth celebrating and shouting out because they clearly had good support, but their numbers were much lower than is normally there. But the other takeaway for me, and I want to go back to Rachel's point about Angela Seifert, the director's talk. I also agree with Ray. I think she did a great job of balancing this idea of the need to keep fighting, for the injustice of these cancellations, but also don't stop celebrating and encouraging the work that needs to go on day in and day out, because there's nothing that can stop the practitioner community from serving needs. And yes, philanthropic organizations can't make up the financial gap, but we still have the work we have to do to keep our heads down and keep going. And so I thought that it was interesting now, and it's good to have people like Gigi Sohn who also join this idea for, having energy and enthusiasm for fighting, but to a large extent, that's why we have organizations like Gigi's and Angela's and others that can literally do, and Shelby, Joey Wonder from Shelby was there, that can really do that hardcore advocating on behalf of practitioners. But we still, as community workers, if you will, we still have to keep our heads down and do the work. And then the last little bit, and I want to throw it back to Leslie in particular, because there was a noticeable presence of something we really never had 3-4 years ago, this position called digital navigators. There were a lot of people there who their position is a digital navigator. And so to me, thinking forward, I have to hope that we can continue not only to find different ways to fund digital navigator programs, but can continue to proliferate throughout the community the impact and the ongoing need for organizations to have digital navigation support. And I know, Leslie, you did a session about working with students on teaching digital literacy training, and there were a lot of digital navigators there. I didn't know if you had any additional comments on that topic about digital literacy training and digital navigators as positions.
Yeah, I mean, this is a concept that was born out of libraries, has grown, and I think that the value of that work has been way more than adequately shown. But I am, concerned for our organizations who stood up those kinds of programs and have those, hired those folks. I am concerned for their ability to continue to provide those critical services. I mean, we've had, we inherited Carol Myers, who's one of the best digital navigators that you'll ever meet. And before the term was even coined, she was doing that work, and we were grateful to be able to add her to our team from PCs for People, thanks to Tom. But the funding struggle is definitely real. And I think what is particularly disappointing is that, there were, I think 65 recommendations for award before the DEA program was terminated. And, these were going to largely fund those digital navigator programs. My comments on the panel were related to our digital ambassadors program, which we funded 5 either current or recently graduated college students to get trained and then be deployed in at one of our partner host sites. So Journey to New Life, Literacy KC, Phoenix Family, Workforce Partnership, and I'm forgetting someone. But anyway, we leveraged our Higher KC grant program to fund that. It was only 120 hours for each of them, so a very limited pilot. But the initial reactions from our host sites are just super positive. So to your point, Tom, it's like these are really great resources for direct service organizations who don't have a strong digital inclusion kind of program, but that these needs show up as people are doing case management and other kinds of engagement. So really a quite critical role. And I do hope that somehow, some way, across the country, we can continue to support those positions, because they do make such a difference. It's so much easier for someone who is completely lost to go to someone at a trusted organization who they know and ask a question about, how do I send a photo to my daughter in California, and how do I get the ones that she's sending me of my grandkid off my phone. So super critical roles. And I'm hoping that our foundation folks are able, our philanthropy can support those. I think just to, as a non sequitur, one of the drums I bang all the time is our employers are consistently expressing their difficulty in finding qualified employees. And I'm hopeful as well that they are able, the private sector is able to, engage in some way and help, in those programs that are preparing people with the basic digital skills. If all you need is a basic, digital skill set to be able to be hired. You don't necessarily have to become a coder or, somebody with really advanced digital skills to be able to get, a good paying job, or a
Thank
job
you,
at all.
Leslie.
Can
That's
I-
really.
Can I
Yeah.
add something quickly? On that, I'd like to add to the digital navigator. I attended a session about marrying or combining community health workers with digital navigators. San Diego, Detroit have done this in the healthcare system, prenatal care, as well as helping patients with their telehealth, getting onto their portals and using the health portal in a more effective manner. But that session was very helpful. And I do know that NDIA has a toolkit for organizations that are interested in doing more of the community health workers as digital navigators. And they talked about how there could be some funding through a dual role model in clinics. The difference between a digital navigator is that and a community health worker is that community health workers are trusted messengers in the community. They help patients navigate care. They work in homes, clinics, community. And they also are the ones that truly are about expanding access. So they have very common roles. They did make it clear that digital navigators are not tech support or IT, however, so ensuring that there's no mistake made there. But it is tech support meets social services. And for me, I thought that was a good takeaway, and knowing that NDIA has a tool for organizations to consider. I just wanted to lift that up.
Thank you, Adriana. And John, you've had your hand up for a while, so go ahead.
No, that's okay. Actually, I'm just blending together what Tom, Leslie, and Adriana had just mentioned. And that is that KC Digital Drive, actually with the help of Health Forward, put together a resource program to help community health workers become digitally literate themselves, digitally skilled themselves, and then being able to use that as a platform to go out to their clients and become digital health navigators for their clients. And so we actually have a program established to help do that, because we're very close to the community health worker movement in the Kansas City area. That includes over 200 community health workers across community-based organizations and healthcare providers. And so within that context, we're helping them as their role changes to start getting out more into the community. Typically, they were based at a hospital or at a CBO. Now their role is moving much more into the community, from community center to library to the home, literally. And so, yes, it's a tremendous channel and one that we're working strongly on now. And I look forward to collaborating with anybody on that to see that really take off. So
Thank you, John and Adriana and Leslie, everyone. That's really good information. And I know from the library's perspective, we have our Tech Access program, which has the digital core, which has digital navigators who are within all of our branches. However, that is another area that is on the potential chopping block because it's a part of AmeriCorps. So that's something that has been implemented. Libraries are trusted places where people go in and can get this sort of support. But we've been able to support people with walk-in services or classes throughout each day at many of our branches, but we may be looking at losing all of those navigators that we have there too. So we're all looking for more ways to collaborate. And then finally, I'm going to give the final word to Marisa, who's had her hand up, and then just your thoughts too on where do we go from here and what does it look like in the year ahead when we're talking about this next year.
Thank you, Carrie. And I'm glad we can circle back to that, because I think tying again, as everyone mentioned, I wanted to touch on something. It's not a shameless plug. I just want to talk about this upcoming forum that we're hosting, which is the Digital Access Research Forum. And it really ties in some of the things that you're asking, and I do want to address the future question. The first day will be a pre-forum series of workshops where we really want to focus in on the kind of skill sets that is needed to implement some of this work. So we want to be able to arm those that are in the field, the digital navigators, those that are pulling data, to have another tool and resource to deepen their ability to get that information and deliver services. So we're going to be doing some workshops on qualitative insights, like how do you take the voices, how do you pull data without it feeling extracted, and then how do you share it back to the community. We're also going to talk about data fundamentals, like how do you pull data as it relates to digital data, but any sort of data, and turn it into visualization. And again, have it kind of help from a reporting standpoint, or even like a pulse check on what the organization's doing and how they're moving the needle. The storytelling, as I talked about earlier, was a common theme at NDIA. And that's something we're going to try to build into this pre-forum, is how do we take the data, how do we take the qualitative aspects of the discussions that we're having with clients and bring it together to tell a story, either to support policy or to support like funding opportunities, or just even general engagement and awareness. And then like what tools are out there and how do we access them and use them. So keep that on your radar if you're interested. It's September 16th. That's a pre-forum. And then the traditional research forum will be the 17th and 18th of September. And I hope I have that date right. I'm happy to drop the information in the chat, and it will be in Kansas City. Now I do want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it open to the public?
Yes, it is. And we just opened registration. Early bird started about a week and a half ago. Okay. So I'd be happy to drop the information in the chat or just follow up with an email. I want to address your question about the future. And this really is something that's been on my mind, again, kind of from a different perspective. But I think like this idea of workforce as it relates to digital beyond, I mean, think about all the things that have that sort of impact, and you have to have that foundational knowledge of digital access and digital tools. One, for example, is the arts. There's so many folks that are doing digital arts, and they are using it not only for like gaming. There's degrees in gaming and how to do the programming, but also like the visual aspect of it. The arts in itself is transitioning to where there's a lot of like graphic design and all these different aspects. Those have a foundation of digital awareness and digital skills. I think, and I don't mean this to be lighthearted and jokingly, but like influencers, like we have so many influencers that are using social media. I mean, even Goodwill is using influencers to promote, you know, their thrift stores. And so these are things that if you had the skill set, you could not only elevate yourself from an economic standpoint, but the organization that you're representing. A lot of organizations are hiring social media folks to help with the influencing and outreach of their brand. And I'll be brief, but while I was in Phoenix, I have family that lives there. I went to this, they invited me to go to this concert. Long story short, I was mesmerized by all the lighting. And those are things that even at a conference, just regular conference, at a concert, that is all digital. I mean, it's that you see even the DJs pull up with a laptop. That's their show. It's a laptop. And so those digital skills, I think, will be more important in the future as we start to deepen the ties to digital skills and deepen the skill set that's needed and the talent and the training. So that's kind of where I see, to answer your question, Carrie, on where are we going to be a year from now, 2 to 3 years from now. I think it's just really looking at a broad scope of all that digital touches, and then all the opportunities from a workforce standpoint.
I wanted to just piggyback on that just very briefly. We just got back about 1 o'clock this morning, as a matter of fact, from Louisville. We did a digital divide simulation there. And while we were there, we met with some organizations. One was called Amped. And they started out as a youth music program. And that still is one of their pillars of their programs, but they're also now offering A+ training. They have an entrepreneur support program as well. And so this digital, skills cuts across all of those programs. They were amazing. And so, I think it's just interesting to your point, Marisa, about, the arts perspective, and the ability to have that be an entry point into digital skills.
Thank you, Leslie and Marisa. Those are really wonderful stories to end on for the panel discussion. And thanks to all of our panelists today for showing up and representing Kansas City in Arizona, and for all of the hard work that you do. Thank you all so much. And I wanted to quickly move into, just in the few short minutes we have left, some community announcements. And I want to start with Mary Kay Morrow, because there's news about Literacy Kansas City. I think you guys may have moved. So wanted to invite you to share your new information.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for that lead in. And also thanks to all the panel presentations. It really helps bring that conference to life for those of us who weren't able to attend. So thank you very much. Yes, we have officially moved our Troost offices and classrooms to the former Plex Pod, which is now called the offices at Park 39, 300 West 39th Street. And I put an open house invitation in the chat for all of you to be invited to come to those open houses. We're very excited. It's a beautiful, historic, old school building that served as not only the Plex Pod, but Westport Middle School, Manual High School, Metropolitan Community College. It's been a lot of different things, and we're very excited. We're taking the whole first floor of that building, and want to formally invite all of you to come and see it with us on 2 dates in June, and the invitation is in the chat. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, everyone. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in, but Mary Kay, it looks like the link is like a shared file that doesn't allow us to click on it. Is there a different PDF or something?
Yeah, can I send that to Wendy?
Yeah, I was gonna mention, you can just email it to me and I'll make sure it gets in our newsletter next week.
Yeah.
Super. Sorry this link isn't working.
No worries. No. Look forward to trying to be there. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for your real-time tech support on that. Okay, we have just a couple of minutes left. Any other community announcements from anyone on the call?
I have two things. Another reminder, especially given our just discussion about the need for support, the T-Mobile HQ Digital Equity Grant, that is open. It's open until July 31st. Please take advantage of that. Let me know if you need any assistance. And speaking of grant writing assistance, I promised Kenneth Yancey we'd make some time for him and Essential Families to make a brief announcement about a new grant writing tool that they've developed. So Kenneth, over to you.
Okay, well, I'll set Kenneth up, but thank you. You actually took my.
Oh,
but it's okay.
Hi, Terry. Sorry about that.
Good. They're good. So yeah, as Tom alluded to, we here at Essential Families, we are also committed to the work that you all are doing with working with children and families, and we have grown 177% last year by way of using our AI tool. And we wanted to share that with other nonprofits, especially in this time of uncertainty, funds are limited, but our tool, we were able to find funds, not just in Kansas City, but outside of Kansas City as well. And ironically, our AI tool is called Carrie, not after Carrie Coogan, but but it's called Carrie. But Carrie, I'll let Kenneth share our AI tool that we have.
Okay, just 90 seconds, folks. It's always a pleasure to be here. Does anyone on the call know what neural networks is? Anybody know what that is? Neural networks. Okay, I'll just take that as maybe, maybe not. So look here. So in 1994, I was part of Sprint's lab, and we experimented with neural networks. Neural networks is what you all are calling AI now. Neural networks is a combination of AI and machine learning. So I saw a pattern when Terry had us, we were applying for all these grants. Anytime there's a pattern, you can inject AI, okay? Not to replace anybody, but to increase their efficiency. In other words, take all the routine task away from them, let AI do it. So I put in the chat here. So I built, I don't know if I can share my screen or not, but based on the grants we were getting, we built a tool called Carrie. I named it Carrie because that was my grandmother. She was a quilt maker, and again, she took pieces of fabric and she would make these big heavy quilts. I take pieces of software, right, and solve problems. So I don't know, I probably can't share my screen, but I put the link in there. So this is a nonprofit. So what we wanted to do is just share, like we've always wanted to do, partner and share, and use the tool, right? Now the tool will create a grant for you in 3 minutes. 3 minutes, yes. And I'm not talking about ChatGTP. ChatGTP is elementary. It's almost kindergarten, right? ChatGTP is a generative AI. That means it specializes in content development. So to write a grant, you have to understand the logic and reasoning and decision making. So it's not ChatGTP in disguise, by no means. So the last thing I want to make a point of is using the tool. You're going to produce this proofread ready grant, but AI, no matter what you hear out there, yes, it's fast, can do all these things really, really fast and all that, but you have to train it, right? And ChatGTP, and there's other, if anybody knows about AI out there, there's other large language modules, LLMs out there, but ChatGTP is proprietary. So we don't know what's really in that. What I built is open source, so it can talk to anybody's platform. The main point is it will write these grants, and what you can do is put in the grants you've won into Carrie. We don't need your data. We're not going to train Carrie off of your data, but what we're going to do, we're going to train Carrie to write grants in your voice. So anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is there's 2 ways to train AI. You can train AI with straight internet content. And we all know the internet is not 100% accurate. So what we've done is we've built Carrie, and you can train Carrie with your language, with grants that you won. So when you apply for a grant, it will keep that same tone that won your last grant. So that's about it. So check it out. You can get a free demo. And again, we're a nonprofit. There's a donation. You can write one grant for $97. You can write unlimited grants for $197 a month. We will find and write grants for you for a donation of $297 a month. So again, what we're targeting is small to medium-sized nonprofits. That's all we're talking about. Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you, Terry. And we will put that information in the newsletter that comes after this call. And then as Ken said, there's information in the chat. So
Thank you.
okay, well, thank you everyone so much for your time today. Really appreciate all of the hard work and engagement that you give to our community and to this coalition in general, and look forward to having you all. We're taking July off, and so we'll be back here on August 1st, which is a Friday at 10:30. So take care, and thanks again so much for all of your hard work. Adriana, did you have something, or are you waving goodbye? Okay, John? John?
Yeah, Carrie, real quick question. I'm still fairly new, and I just want to make sure I understand. You just said that we're taking off, but there is a meeting on our calendars for the 20th. Is that a different group, or is that still the same group? Like, I think Leslie sent the invitation out. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
we host that one, John. Casey Digital Drive hosts that coalition meeting, and it's still happening on the 20th.
Okay, is it the same group of people, or is it?
Yeah.
I'm just okay. All right.
We'll just have we'll have different programming for that one.
Gotcha. Okay. Just double checking. All right. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
John, thanks so much for being on the call, and thanks again to all of our panelists, and we'll see you back here on August 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.